So much has gone, and little is new. Do-do-do-do. And as the sparrow sings, don't chorus for me. My friends talk of glory untold dream, when love is gone and God is just a word. We had a friend, a talking man. His name was C.M. Kozeman. Hello everyone, again with my awful rendition of this classic David Bowie song. If you know what it is, type it in the comments. So we start this video off by giving a middle finger to the algorithm. Yes, we always need comments, subscriptions, likes, and clicks on that little goddamn bell icon so that I can continue answering these amazing fan questions and providing you good content on this channel. And just to summarize, this is a complicated answers video to questions sent in by my internet friend and Patreon supporter Marianne. Long story short, if you subscribe to me on Patreon, you can ask questions, and Marianne, as a subscriber, just asked a whole cartload of amazing questions, really insightful ones too, which I greatly enjoy answering. So without much ado, let's go with the answers. Now, before beginning, I'll remind everyone to please consider donating to me on patreon.com again. If you like the CM Kozeman channel, you can also get some merch at our merch store, where it's in the link below and the pinned comment, and you can get a logo of this channel, or you can get t-shirts or hoodies based on All Tomorrows, my popular science fiction story about the future of human evolution. Also, another note before beginning for my friends in the United States, I'll say it here, and so that we know only people who are invested in this channel are able to help. If you're in a university and if you want to invite me over as a university talker for an event of yours, please, I am kind of slowly putting out feelers out there to be more active in the United States, because the last time I checked, something like 80% of the viewership of this channel comes from the United States. The rest, it's like 10% from the UK and Australia, and maybe like 3% from Turkey, my native country. I guess we've come a long way, so I want to make this a more concrete impact on the good old US of A. So if you're in a university, or if you got connections with a cultural center or whatever, and if you want to host Daddy Kozeman over for a talk at your place, let's see what can come up with. I will only ask for my travel fees and maybe some sort of sustenance fee for me to stay there, and my lunch and shit. So there, I don't know what's gonna come out of this, but it's worth trying. If you're in a college club, or like some sort of cultural institution, get in touch with me if you are able to invite me over as a speaker. And if you have this event, you can sell the tickets. I won't ask for any ticket money. You'll also have some chance of making money from attendance tickets from all those thousands of people who will definitely come to hear this old weird Turkish uncle speak. Okay, let's go with Marianne's questions. Thank you once again, Marianne. Your questions are very insightful. And without much further ado, let's go. How is Istanbul's surreal art scene? Okay, I live in Istanbul, Turkey, by the way. Okay, Turkish visual arts actually have a deep and pretty well-established tradition, more so in the decades between the 1920s and maybe the 1980s. We had some very talented local artists. Bedri Rahmi Eyüboğlu, the last name is Eyüboğlu. Okay, that's one. He's a kind of like Miro-like sculptor of these amazing mosaic panels, and he's extremely inventive and with a very colorful visual world. There's Abidin Dino. The last name is literally Daino, as in Dino the dinosaur. So he's also a very talented, abstract, sort of a surrealist artist that I really admire. There are many more. Like there's Adnan Çoker. It's not choker as in choke me daddy, but no, it's like Coker, that's the last name. And he's a modernist artist with these like beautiful glass-like abstractions. I really like his work. So Turkish artists have had a lot of interesting, let us say, creations, artwork in surreal works or surreal adjacent works, let us say. There have been not many people who could match with Dali or Picasso, but then again, there are some very talented names that are severely underrepresented in the world outside of Turkey. And then there's a snag. You see, in the last, let's say, 5 decades or something, there are many Turkish artists, and I am also partially guilty of this fault. Many people started painting abstractly or surreally before they could get a grip on realism itself. So at the present day and age, there's a lot of chaff too, like these like very repetitive works about these like weird scenes and situations. And the worst has to be this kind of scene of these like hip graffiti-esque artists who are like basically imitating Basquiat, but with a more like Gen Z doomer twist. So it's like haha ironic painting of Homer Simpson. Basically there are lots of these people who are like hacks who disguise their lack of talent with irony, cynicism, and yes, a surreal approach. So I don't like those. I like the older generation of artists. There are some great new generation artists too, don't get me wrong. There is Elif Varol Ergen, Elif Varol. Last name is Ergen. But if you spell the first 2 names, she has this amazing surreal visions. There's this very close friend who goes with the nickname Uzay Çöpü, who's like Uzay Copu. It literally means space garbage, but this guy is a very talented genius. He basically creates these visions of slimy masses of humanity. Maybe his critique of Turkey's self-aggrandizing quote-unquote elite classes and their actual lack of vision and humanity. Very, very strong and potent stuff. There are also lots of great self-taught outsider artists too. One of them is Muhammed Yalçın. So he's basically, he just draws and paints. He never learned how to paint. He just covers every available surface with these really nice, charming, abstract patterns that look like bugs or people. So a lot of other people. But in terms of a scene, Istanbul arguably has a worse scene than Ankara, the other big city. And the people in Ankara are like more honest, down to earth and humble and way more talented in my opinion. But I think like there are lots of names I'm skipping over too. There are many very talented artists, surrealists, realists, and a lot. And aside from the like really crass talented bullshit hacks, which I'm not gonna name, aside from those cretins basically, there are many talented people here, and many of them deserve much more representation. The real problem is, I think, a lack of touch with global. I'm not saying global in a contemporary global way. I'm saying like the history and mythology and the lore of the region as it is understood by the greater world. Now, for example, there are lots of artists who paint all these like gender issues, but few would know, for example, that the mythical spring of Narcissus is actually literally located in like one weird province of Turkey itself, and the spring still stands there. I've been there, and so they don't make this connection somehow. I don't know. They lack this sort of kind of way to connect the mythological, the supernatural, the subconscious with the real world and its history in a way only the British and some Americans are able to do. But heck, we're getting there. So there. Another question by Marianne. How is it starting your surreal art career where you live? Is there a surreal art community? I think I just answered this. There's not only a community, but also a heritage of like surreal or surreal adjacent artists. As of now, there's nothing you can compare to the original surrealist movement or the Dada movement. You know, there are no people dressing in sharp suits and publishing difficult to read newsletters or free verse poetry. But there are a lot of people, and they're always in community, maybe more so than they need to be, because if you know anything about Turkish or Mediterranean people in general, they spend more time dealing with people than they should be in dealing with things or their craft or their hobby. So there's like lots of, the Israelis call this balagan, and if you're listening, I'm sure you will know, a lot of talk is cheap, you know. So community is valuable, but also talk is cheap. So there's a big community. And it's kind of difficult to make a career out of this, as it is in all parts of the world. So I have to not only rely on my family, that is to say my wife, who's the chief breadwinner of the house, but also I work at a day job with advertising agencies, and I've been lucky on that respect. So I don't know. I can't complain. I think it's like all great artists had to do this unless they were born rich. And if you're born rich, you usually don't get to push your comfort zone. So I can't really complain. Also, working for a day job makes me more hale and strong and fit, and it makes me miss paint. So I can't complain. Most artists do a few side jobs. Some do tattoos and do more or less well. Others have day jobs, or they're supported by their families or significant others. I don't know. I think the story is like this all over the world. If you're listening and you got a solution to this as an artist, how to make a living, feel free to share your response in the comments, by the way. Okay, Marian asks more Turkish questions. What local traditions are dear and meaningful to you? How do you apply them to your life and art? Istanbul is very particular for the syncretism and the way it was sculpted by the many cultures that lived through it. You must be very lucky living in a sort of human vortex, Marianne says. Well, Marianne, yes, it is a vortex, but sometimes the vortex throws up things we would rather not see. But then again, are not all big world cities like this? And, I'm more of a small or mid-sized city kind of guy. Give me, I don't know, Cincinnati, Ohio, or give me Brighton in the UK, or Leiden in Germany, or I don't know, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, some shit like that any day. I would rather have those. But I'm in a big city, and yes, there are lots of people, lots of interesting traditions. So I have two ways of thinking about this. One, I really value. I like, for example, every Easter, I used to visit the Greek Orthodox churches for their Easter ritual. I'm not Greek Orthodox myself, but it's just very nice and mystical to see all these people walking around, praying with these springtime leaves and candles, and all these people coming from Greece, and it's a happy scene, happy community altogether. I am, on the other hand, not a huge fan of these types who are the foods of the city, the culture of the city. When this thing kind of gets made into a sort of touristy or a marker of cultural sophistication, then I'm not a huge fan of this. You got people whose grandfathers illegally took over Greek businesses or Armenian businesses, okay? And then these people up and come 2 generations later. They say, oh, of course, Armenians make the best food in the city. Topik, I like that. And you're kind of flaunting it into their faces. The most concrete example of this I can name is that there used to be a Greek school in this district called Karaköy. And being a wild and uncontrollable urban explorer type, I actually illegally went into this place when it was still closed. And in all of its classrooms, there were these murals dating over from the 1950s, depicting all sorts of surreal creatures, sea monsters. It was a wild kind of place. So just by coincidence, one day I broke into this place and took pictures. Okay. Few years later, they turned this place into a culture center, hosting all these contemporary artists, questioning identities, reticulating splines, making difficult to understand crap that passes for contemporary installation art. Motherfucker pours a kilo of rice on the floor and says it represents some shit. Get out of here! And when they're doing that shit, they painted over all those old surreal murals. They're all gone now, gone forever. And why did they do this? I don't know. They thought it would be more modern or more classy. I don't know. So it's adding insult to the injury. First, for reasons right or wrong, the government in the 1950s or 60s forces this school to close down. The Istanbul Greek community still retains ownership of this place. So that's one blow, okay? And then, years later, they scrub over what's left of the place's authenticity and goddamn turn it into some sort of pale imitation of this tasteless, soulless, saltless things you would see in Amsterdam or Berlin or whatever. What the fuck for? It just adds insult to the injury, in my opinion. Of course, there's always a question of originality and like who enjoys the most original version of some place's culture. But like I draw the line when like these like bourgeois bohemian types come over and appropriate something. I just don't like it. So that's the human vortex for you. Shit on both ends with some interesting pieces floating in between. But hey, let's not get too cynical about it. All right. Do different colors have meaning for you in your paintings, or is it just about going with the flow of your inspiration? I have some colors I really like. One of them is composition of blacks, yellows, and whites on a yellow or tangerine background. I like this stuff so much, and I saw it years and years ago in Australia with Aboriginal art, but I appropriated the colors, I guess, and didn't want to stylistically look too much like it. I really like those colors. They really like speak to me. Yellow, who knows? Maybe it's the color of madness, or maybe it's the color of, I don't know, French fries or some shit. Yellow always makes me hungry. I like that color. So red and yellow might as well be from Mickey D's as it is from the darkest, deepest parts of the Mobius strip we call the subconscious. Then I have this other color schemes where it's like greens, blues, and pale reds on a black background, and it's like neon. I really like that stuff. What else? I really like, with watercolors, I like pale blues and pale oranges. I don't know. But sometimes I just use one color because that's the last color I have left in the pan, and I don't want that paint to go to waste, so I quickly paint some shit with it. But what happens is those paintings turn out really good because I just don't care doing it, Just do it like don't care about it. And that's when all the best stuff actually comes out. So yeah, that's really nice and intense and good. And sometimes, like in exhibits, I've had times where like these psychoanalysis types come out and ask me like, red. I say, yes ma'am, that's the name of the same color 3 times over. What about it? You must have felt such passions, exorcised such demons when you were painting that shit, they say. I said, ma'am, yes, thank you, ma'am. And then if they look like they're about to buy this thing, I give them the whole subconscious spiel. I give them the talk about the subconscious being a Mobius strip and not a lower layer. That's a nice line, by the way. But if they're like just a casual observer, I say, well, you'd be surprised. This was actually the last color I had left lying at the bottom of my bucket, so I didn't want that to go to waste. In fact, usually when I try to like make a painting articulated, it kind of like fails. But as I just told you, like in some other things, if you do it like you don't care about the person, the thing, then it becomes all spicy and zesty and nice. So interesting. And I think this kind of answers the other question Marianne had for me. Do you have visions of the things you paint and draw beforehand? So if I'm drawing like realistic speculative evolution creatures or dinosaurs or creatures, yes, then I have a very precise vision, and I usually have sketches, layouts, studies, and then I do them over them. So that's one thing. But if I'm talking about surreal art, it always works the best when I don't know what I'm doing. I just like the great American philosopher the Joker once commented, I just do things. Do I really look like a man with a plan? So that's that for me. Sometimes, like, if the painting is, let's say, a wide rectangle, I kind of say, okay, I want this to be a long snake-like creature, but usually very, very little deliberation. Very little deliberation at all. What was the job you dreamed of doing growing up when you were a child? Asks Marianne. I don't know. When I was a child, my brother and I had a very sheltered upbringing, to such an extent that my brother wanted to be a gardener in our gated community. Why? Because he didn't want to be far from his mama. That's what he said when he was 12 going on 13. So there. I did not think about what I wanted to be until I reached elementary school, where after I saw Jurassic Park, I said I wanted to be a genetic engineer. But then I realized drawing dinosaurs is easier than making dinosaurs, which might probably be impossible, but we didn't know that at that time. So there. Then when I went to college, and I was accepted by an Ivy League school, actually, with some sort of scholarship too, I must add. At Cornell University, I took double major classes from like studying biology and filmmaking. So back in those days, I actually had like, you can even see it from some videos in this channel where I cut things and cut scenes. Like I'm actually quite an adept film editor and when I was younger, my father, bless his soul, he was in the photography and audiovisual business, so he let me play with his camcorders that were obsolete, so I actually could learn how to edit stuff before I even used a computer video editing program, where I would like connect the camcorder to a VHS VCR machine and just go play, pause, record, rewind on it, and like record bits and pieces of different cuts to the same tape, and the tape would be the master tape. So I really wanted to be a filmmaker until like well into college, and then it slowly changed into wanting to become a documentary filmmaker. But then when reality hit hard and I had to like work for a living, the only viable career option for someone like this was in the advertising industry. And because I have a way with words, I chose not to be a film editor, not to be a graphics designer, but actually a copywriter. And they have this like kind of bullshit role in advertising agencies. It's called a strategist. It's the role of the person who's not exactly a creative writer, but he or she writes the brand presentations, does some research and stuff. So I did that for a while. Also was a copywriter. Then I slowly leveled up. I realized that advertising writing was actually quite fun if you knew what you were doing. And it's not about being creative at all. It's basically realizing what the other guy wants and being able to deliver this to them, and getting to know people that way and like doing stuff for them this way. I actually find it pretty fun. Like if your client is a kind of male dominated, let's say a port company or something, and you should know that these guys just want to see figures and statistics. So like what do? I go to their website, see how many ships they handle in a year, and then I write them like creative advertising, like 25,000 vessels can't be wrong. Choose our port. And like this really makes them happy. And I like that sort of advertising writing. Also owing to my rare and mysterious English skills. Remember, I am broadcasting from the year of our Lord 2023, June the 12th, from Istanbul, Turkey. And even in this day and age, people cannot express their thoughts in English or even in Turkish, even if their fucking lives depended on it. I used to think this was maybe due to something wrong in the education system. But now the more I know people in work life, and present company excluded, I must make this caveat, like everyone I worked with is like top tier people. But now when I look at people in like white collar jobs, basically, they just don't have the wherewithal. Like they couldn't express an idea if their lives depended on it, and they just have been ultra specialized in some like narrow field of tasks. And this being a Mediterranean country, a lot of their effort is wasted on tracking other people, this sort of conniving, backstabbing, madman shit, office politics shit. It happens everywhere, but here it's a whole other level. So people waste a lot of their like processing power with these petty power games. If you worked at a white collar job, you would know them. Sometimes they're even sex games, to be honest. So that's like very slimy and cliquey and conniving. So all their human potential is wasted keeping track of who said what, who said, she said, he said, she said, who's gonna get this promotion, what shit not. So at the end, you're left with a residue who cannot even express what they think about the weather if their lives depended on it. A severe lack of humanity. And let me not just tar Turkey, but I think most of the world is like this, and it's a severe problem. It's also one of the reasons you suddenly see this turn to the populist right all around the world. Because the people who pass for a quote-unquote educated, left-leaning, they have nothing to offer to community. They only have things to take. Gotta get the Netflix, gotta get the fucking Tesla, gotta get the sustainable clothes and shit. Gotta get the good restaurant. Well, my friends, you deserve everything coming your way. Okay, that kind of spiraled out fast, but I hope you enjoyed Daddy Kozman ranting. Okay, do you dream a lot in your sleep? Does it affect your art? Oh boy, Marianne, I know you said you're not a psychiatrist, but the suspicion grows and grows. Yes, I dream a lot, and I keep meticulous dream journals. In fact, okay, let me just unpack my dream journal. I have it in volumes. Ever since 2010, I've been documenting my dreams. And, well, let me today is the year of our Lord 2023, the 12th of June. Let me look at a dream a couple of years ago. So let's look at maybe 12th of June 2017. How old ago is that? 6 years or some shit? All right. I have an entry from the 6th of June 2017. Oh boy, but I'm not gonna read that. Just says seashore erotic vision of a dark-haired girl. Okay, I'm just gonna have to let that pass. Let's look at 2018. Daddy Cosmo's perverted dream sex journal. I really should bequeath this to a library or something. Okay, I got an entry from the 18th of June 2018, and this is tame enough to read. So it says, I'm somehow back in the year 2004 with my current knowledge of things. I try to warn my family about impending disasters, but I also feel that I have to do all my life's work again. What a bummer. And then there's a second dream that night. Dream of strange reptiles roaming free in the gardens around my family home. I see a skink with a spade-like nose, so it's a speculative evolution dream. Then I see a truncated-looking boa snake. Then I see a very thin and dark-colored tree snake. And then I go to some weird sort of ice cliff and I find two dead-looking birds. I almost throw them away, but then I rescue it. Turns out it's a fat yellow budgie without a tail. I chirp at it and it chirps back. Oh, what nice dreams. So yeah, these are the kinds of dreams I have. I think it's impossible to deny it somehow filters into my art, but I rarely have a weird dream and then wake up and paint it. But when I take these notes, sometimes there are these little sketches by the side. So in that little weird snake dream, I have a sketch of the skink with a spade-like nose, and it's kind of cute. Some other dreams, there are some other sketches, but I'll take them to my grave. All right. How long has it been? Oh, Marianne's questions just keep coming and coming. Okay. She says, in some of your paintings, you use your fingers to create patterns. How do you live your art-making process? Do you feel like you are thinking about what you create during the process? Does using your body as a tool change that flow and make everything more incarnate? Maybe not a very clear question, but how basically, Marianne asks, how is your abstract intellectual versus physical concrete way of making art? Okay, so this is a really nice question. There have been several notable occasions in which I used body performance to make art. One of them was during the Dinosauroids art series, in which I imagined how life would evolve if dinosaurs were intelligent. And in order to make this more believable, then I created some cave art in a way that would suit these intelligent bird-like dinosaurs. So what I did was I folded my arms like a sort of raptor dinosaur's wings, and I just gripped these twigs and feathers between them, and I daubed them in these bowls, and I kind of beat against the paper with them to make patterns. So that was really fun, and I liked that. I felt like I was channeling the spirit of an intelligent dinosaur from a parallel universe. All right. Then there's also another part of my work in the years past when I used to paint on big pieces of paper, basically. And well, with these things, the paper is the size of a door, basically. And I had this lying on the floor because basically the paint I use is always runny, so I can't use it on a wall because it runs down. So basically I crawl around on this thing and paint on it. And because I don't want to get any paint on my shorts or t-shirts, I usually do this in my underwear. Heck, when sometimes I was painting alone, I even did it buck naked. And it's an interesting thing. It's it feels like creating a bodysuit or creating a real creature on this paper, which is a gateway to another universe. These last few years though, after COVID, I was kind of limited because of COVID to paint on smaller pieces, so not much performance there. But I miss it, and I would gladly do it again given the space. Okay. Oh my god, Marianne now hits with a banger question. Did you ever eat insects purposefully? Oh yes, I cannot lie. I did, and I enjoyed it. In primary school, there were ants in the backyard, and I used to grab them with my fingers and eat them. They tasted like lemon, just to gross out girls and impress them, basically. Kind of weird trick of the subconscious, if you know how that goes. Okay. Then sometimes when I'm trekking and I like flipping stones, and sometimes I find ants' nests and ant eggs. They're so tasteful and delicious and nutritious that, I can't resist like just licking my finger, daubing them in the eggs and just eating them. So there. I don't know. Other than that, generally, if it counts, like when I'm exploring tide pools and stuff, sometimes I find a rock and smash limpets and eat them. They taste like the best seafood in the world and they're totally free. I like that. But truth be told, I don't like killing animals unnecessarily. And if I was starving, that would be another question. But other than the guilty pleasures of these like ant eggs and limpets. And there was this one time I was in like the dark, beautiful, lonely coast between Oregon and California. It's like that region between, your naughty bits and your poopy bits, that sensitive region. Okay, imagine if that was a beach and it was beautiful. I was there. Don't ask me the circumstances, but I was there on the beach. The sand was full of these mole crabs and these like little isopod things that kind of like they swim among the sand because it's a tide pool. And I was just so happy just crunching them like nuts and berries. They were all salty and crunchy. I must have eaten like hundreds of them that day. And I was worried I would get sick, but I didn't. So there. Alright, more eating questions from Marianne. I hope we don't get any war questions in here, but okay. Did you ever think about the animals and plants you eat and when you're eating them? I don't actually, but maybe I should. I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian. I like meat. I like eating pork too. I like milk products. I like cheese products. Heck, to my guilt, I even like eating calamari and octopus. Especially with octopus, it's kind of a pity because those animals are really intelligent and they really suffer when people are preparing them. But then again, Daddy, I'm sorry, I'm getting kind of sleepy in here. Then again, we all have to eat somehow, and I wouldn't mind if the government forbid it to consume these kinds of fish because they're suffering, but until they do that, I can't do that either. So I think about them in a general way, and I'm always thankful. That's the most I could say. About the plants, I just eat fruit. Like if I had a fruit tree and I was eating on it, I would like think positive thoughts about the tree because the tree is giving its food to me. And I'd probably return the service by like shitting in an empty field so the seeds germinate, if you know what I mean. Another food related question. How would you feel about exchange of life and energy between what you eat and you? Well, it's a very direct thing, isn't it? Like when I went on trekking, I usually used to take food for granted. It's always there. You can always eat. There's always a meal around. Shit. But then when you're trekking, you realize that it really is like an energy bar in a computer game. And when you even eat like the cheapest looking Snickers or the McChicken meal, it really raises your energy meal. So with food, I always have a thankful relation, but it's not limited to like these like naturally cooked natural foods. Even if I'm eating a McChicken burger or some nuggets, I really cherish those things. I really value them to such an extent that even this day and age, one of my favorite games is that when I'm in a shopping mall and I walk past the food court, and if I see a tray of nuggets somebody just left out there without eating, whoop, I scavenge that shit like crazy, and it feels so good. I used to do this in COVID too, and people looked at me as if I was radioactive or some shit. But yeah, I also like rubbing people's pusillanimity into their faces. Like if someone went out on a date with me, I wouldn't say to them like, hey, let's go scavenging at the mall food court. Okay, maybe that's not what I would do, but like I do that for fun. I don't know. Would you eat a dinosaur or one of the surreal reptiles you create? Another interesting question. All of my creatures that I draw and paint, I like them to be happy. If they were already dead, I don't know. I remember like when I was in college in the US, they had these Cahoon nights and they had these unlimited alligator tail. I like that. I ate that until I burst at the seams, and I really enjoy crocodile meat. So maybe, if it's a creature I drew though, I probably wouldn't want it to die. I don't know. Alright, we're at 41 minutes. One last question from Marianne. This is gonna be a 3-part odyssey, it seems. Okay. How was the experience of participating in a horror movie? Did it make you explore your own fears and personal horror? So a little background for this first. In 2015 or 14, I was a set painter for a local horror film called Baskin. It's spelled Baskin, Baskin, like in Baskin Robbins. And, well, long story short, the guy who directed this film was once upon a time a close friend. But then again, I realized, no hard feelings, but we didn't see some things eye to eye. And like maybe he's changed, but he seemed to be more interested in holding court and interesting people like me being in that court rather than like genuine exchange. But then again, I'm a cranky eccentric too, so maybe I may have rubbed him off the wrong way too. I don't know. Just didn't see eye to eye, but no hard feelings. And even to this day age, like I really think this Baskin film was a really great film, and I'm glad I worked in it. I'm glad I participated in it. So there, so for this film, it's about basically it's a weird surreal horror film, like a modern day giallo film. It has also like some subconscious stuff going on there. So some police guys, they're like super gung-ho and kind of chauvinistic. One day they receive a call from a haunted place and like all sorts of bloody horrors start appearing because it seems like this place is a demon's nest or a dimensional portal or some stuff like that. So for this movie I was supposed to paint the walls, which was like in a place inhabited by a cult. So there were lots of weird like alien sex scenes, demon scenes, like strange apparitions, like scary stuff, And normally in my paintings, I'm not that much into gore and blood. In fact, not at all. I only have like an occasional fornication scene and that's that. But with this Baskin, there were lots of scenes of like creatures cutting people's heads off and stuff like that. So perplexingly, I was just acting on a brief. Remember, I have also had an advertising background, so I know what the customer wants. I know what they want to see. So I rendered that. It was exciting to be like given that much freedom, to be honest. Like I had this entire abandoned warehouse, just like hundreds of meters of walls to paint. And it was such a joy. I think I really felt exorbitant doing that. And I didn't get to tackle any personal fears or horror. It was just like doing a favor for a friend. They paid me too, and I was also mentioned in the movie credits, so that's a good thing. So it was a more business-like favor for a friend rather than a confrontation of my fears. But I really liked being able to paint a really big surface without any consideration whatsoever. Like I could do whatever I wanted, no limits, and that felt really relieving and ecstatic and happy making. So maybe there was. It was just me there. I could have done anything. No one would have heard. All right, so that's how it affected me. By the way, if any of you Patreon viewers, now I know I have like 40,000 subscribers. That's a fair number. Okay. If any of you have any walls you want me to paint, I would gladly do it. You just have to fly me in. If I have any visa costs, you need to cover that. That's that. Flight, travel and board and food. You have to feed me lots of McChicken burgers. And if you're in the States, I want Culver's burgers. That brand? Culver's, Culvers. They got this buttery mayonnaise hamburger. I live and die for that shit. So like, bring me in, fly me in, pay for my visa, pay for my hotel, and pay for my Culver's delicious buttery mayonnaise chicken burgers, and I'll paint anything you want, friends. Just keep that in mind. Also remember, I'm also kind of like putting feelers out for talks in the US. So if you want to do that, I'd love to join up. And if you also feel charitable, please consider donating to me on patreon.com. Thanks once again to Marianne for these questions. If you donate to me on Patreon, you get to see new paintings and you get to ask questions just like Marianne just did. And we'll continue with this series. And thank you all for being there with me in this quirky, crazy, nice channel. I love you all and goodbye.